They told you a lie. The great lie is that wealth is a paycheck, that the number on your W-2 is the key that unlocks the door. Earn more, they said. Climb the ladder. Get the promotion. Then, and only then, can you be rich. And yet, 78% of professional football players, men who earn more in one season than most people earn in a decade, are bankrupt or under severe financial stress within 2 years of retirement. How can a river of gold run through your hands and leave you with nothing but dust? The answer isn't in a spreadsheet, it's in a flannel shirt, in a small town in Vermont. It's in the story of a man who was invisible to the world of wealth. A man who proved the great lie was hollow. His name was Ronald Read. Ronald Read was a janitor. He was a gas station attendant. For 50 years, he fixed cars and mopped floors. His peak earnings never touched the lowest rung of the corporate ladder. To the world, he was a simple man living a simple life. He drove a second-hand Toyota. He used safety pins to hold his coat together. His neighbors, wanting to help, would sometimes leave him a stack of firewood on his porch, thinking he couldn't afford to heat his own home. In 2014, Ronald Read died. He was 92 years old, and the man who everyone thought had nothing left an estate of $8 million. The town was speechless. His family was stunned. The world's financial experts were baffled. A janitor had quietly built a fortune that dwarfed those of executives, doctors, and lawyers who were drowning in debt. He didn't have a higher income. He didn't have a secret inheritance. He didn't win the lottery. How he had a secret machine he built, piece by piece, in the quiet solitude of his small life. A machine for creating wealth that worked so perfectly, so relentlessly, that his tiny income was all the fuel it ever needed. While the world was chasing bigger shovels, Ronald was building a better engine. To understand his genius, you must first understand the prison he escaped. He lived through the Great Depression. As a young man, he saw the invisible wall. He saw fortunes built on paychecks and prestige evaporate overnight. He saw bankers and breadlines. He saw the systemic flaw. Income is a stream, but wealth is a reservoir. A stream can run dry. Your job can disappear. Your skills can become obsolete. Tying your future to a paycheck was like tying your ship to a single rotting pier. Ronald saw this and made a choice. He would not play that game. He looked around not for a better job, but for a better model. And he found it in the most unlikely of places, in the patient, unyielding logic of a forest. This was his spark of genius. He realized a tree does not grow by sudden windfalls. It grows by a process. It adds a small ring, day after day, year after year. It doesn't care about the weather, the economy, or the opinions of other trees. It simply executes its code. Slow, patient, compounding. Ronald decided he would not be a hunter, chasing big game. He would be a gardener. He would plant seeds. And so he began to build his machine. It had 5 parts. 5 simple, powerful principles that became the architecture of his life. The first part was its heart. Every time money touched his hands, before he paid for his food, his gas, or his simple home, he performed a sacred act. He paid himself first, not what was left over the first cut. It was a private tax he levied on his own life, a tribute paid not to a government, but to his own future. This was the heart of his machine, pumping a small, steady stream of capital into the system. It didn't matter if the amount was large or small. All that mattered was the rhythm, the unbreakable consistency. The heart must beat. The second part was the skeleton. This was the frame upon which everything else was built. He lived profoundly below his means. This wasn't poverty. This was a weapon. The world screamed at him to consume, to upgrade, to display his worth through possessions. His flannel shirt and his old Toyota were not signs of deprivation. They were his armor. They were a fortress wall against the lie that what you own is who you are. By defining enough for himself, he created a vast space between what he earned and what he spent. This space, this surplus, was the territory where his freedom was born. It was the soil where his forest would grow. The skeleton provided the structure, the discipline that allowed the heart to keep pumping. The third part was the brain. Ronald Read did not gamble. He did not chase hot stocks or listen to talking heads on television. He went to the local library. He sat for hours reading the Wall Street Journal. He studied companies. He wasn't looking for quick wins. He was looking for engines. Businesses that made things people needed, in good times and in bad. Soap, toothpaste, railroads, utilities. He sought to understand the machine of the American economy, not to outsmart it. The brain's job was simple: to direct the capital from the heart with cold, dispassionate logic, far from the madness of the crowd. He wasn't a stock picker, he was an owner. This led to the fourth part, the hands, the active principle. Buy assets, not liabilities. This is a distinction that has been deliberately blurred by the world. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. A fancy car, a bigger house than you need, the latest phone. They are anchors. An asset is something that puts money into your pocket. Ronald's hands never reached for anchors. They only reached for engines. When he bought a share of Procter & Gamble, he wasn't buying a flickering symbol on a screen. He was hiring a tiny, invisible employee who worked for him 24 hours a day, making soap and sending him a portion of the profits. When he bought a share of a railroad, he owned a microscopic piece of the steel track that was the nation's artery. His money wasn't sitting, it was working. His hands weren't spending, they were building. He assembled an army of tiny workers, each share a soldier, sending a little trickle of gold back to him in the form of dividends. And that gold, it went right back to the heart, to be pumped through the system again, to buy more assets, to hire more workers. The fifth and final part of the machine was the most powerful. It was the lungs. This part required no effort, only patience. It was time. Ronald understood the deep magic of compounding. He understood that his little forest of assets would not just grow, it would grow on its own growth. The dividends his stocks paid would buy more stocks. Those new stocks would pay their own dividends. It was a slow, quiet explosion. For this to work, he had to do the hardest thing of all, nothing. When the market crashed, he did not sell. When the world panicked, he sat in his library and read. He let his machine breathe. He gave it the oxygen of decades. The lungs inhaled time and exhaled wealth. The heart pumped the capital. The skeleton created the surplus. The brain directed the flow. The hands built the portfolio. And the lungs breathed life into it all, letting time perform its inexorable miracle. That is the story of the janitor's machine. Now, look in the mirror. That feeling you get 2 days after payday, looking at your bank account and wondering, where did it all go? That is the sound of a machine with no skeleton. It's the feeling of living in a house with no frame, where the winds of marketing and social pressure blow your money away like leaves. That credit card bill that feels like a ball and chain. The car payment that eats a third of your income. That is the work of hands that have been taught to buy anchors instead of engines. You are not building a fleet, you are collecting anchors that hold you in place. That constant, low-grade anxiety about the future, the fear of losing your job, the primary source of your entire world. That is the sound of a system with no heart, a system where the future gets only the scraps, if there are any scraps left. That confusion you feel watching the news, as markets boom and bust, feeling like you're on the outside of a game you don't understand. That is a machine with no brain, leaving you vulnerable to fear and greed, the twin executioners of wealth. And that feeling of being on a treadmill, running faster and faster, getting promotions, earning more, but never seeming to get ahead. That is a machine with no lungs, a machine that is never given the time to breathe, to compound, to work its magic. It is a life spent planting a new garden every spring, instead of tending to a forest that will one day tower over you and provide shelter for generations. Your financial frustration is not a personal failure, it is a design flaw. You have been sold a faulty machine. The world told you to focus on the fuel your income while giving you a machine that is 99% exhaust. Ronald Read's genius was to ignore the fuel and focus entirely on the engine. He built a hyper-efficient machine that could turn trickles of fuel into a reservoir of power. This story demolishes the lie. It proves that the size of your income is the most overrated factor in building wealth. It is the variable that matters least. What matters is the percentage of that income you put through a working machine. A janitor with a 20% savings rate and a good machine will obliterate a doctor with a 5% savings rate and a broken one every single time. This is the new dawn, the realization that the game is not unwinnable. You've just been playing with the wrong rules. The keys to the kingdom are not locked away in some Wall Street vault. They are in a janitor's tool belt. They are available to you, right now, today, regardless of your income. You can build the heart. You can make the first cut. For yourself, an automatic transfer the day you get paid. A tax to your future. You can build the skeleton. You can define enough, declare war on lifestyle inflation, and create the surplus that is the seed of your freedom. You can build the brain. You can read one book, ignore the noise, and understand that you are buying pieces of real businesses, not lottery tickets. You can train your hands to distinguish between an engine and an anchor, and you can give your machine the lungs of time, the patience to let the process work. This is the forgotten truth. Wealth is not a lottery ticket. It is not an inheritance. It is not a job title. It is a system, and its architecture is open source. Ronald Read, the invisible janitor, discovered it. He built it, and he left the blueprint for all of us. Wealth is not earned. It is architected.